At Team Toyota, they've been selling and servicing new and used Toyotas in your community for over 50 years. And you can reserve your next new Toyota with them today. You'll get a realistic timeline, and even in this crazy market, they won't charge you over MSRP. Or don't wait at all. With over 75 certified Toyotas, including a bunch of RAV4 and Highlanders, you can drive one home today. And you can always trust them to maintain your current vehicle. Their service and collision centers are high-tech, comfortable, and will save you time and money. Team Toyota can help you go anywhere you want, but they'll always be your hometown team. Just visit teamtoyota.net and choose from 3 locations in Langhorne, Glen Mills, or Princeton.
Hey folks, welcome to the Phillies Talk podcast presented by Team Toyota. Corey Simon down here in Clearwater, Florida on a newsy day for the Phillies. Dave Dombrowski spoke this morning, and one of the things he was asked about was Bryce Harper and Bryce Harper's recovery. Dombrowski said that Harper is recovering on schedule. The doctors are pleased with his progress. Harper has progressed at taking dry swings. There's still a lot of steps in the recovery process. I mean, he's going to then need to hit off a tee and then, track live pitches and then eventually progress to batting practice. But that's all kind of in the future here. But in the immediate future, Harper is expected to arrive at Phillies camp March 8th or March 9th, about 2 weeks away, to join his teammates. So that'll be a big arrival. Obviously, he's not going to be participating the way he would in a normal camp, but it'll be good to have him back around the team, obviously. So that's the latest on Bryce Harper. He's projected to miss the majority of the first half of the season. And one of the things Dave Dombrowski talked about on Thursday was he was asked about like the outside external projection systems. They're pegging the Phillies to win like a mid-80s win total similar to last year. These systems have them at like 87 wins. And Dombrowski pointed out that there are several like really unknown factors in the Phillies season. One of them is when Harper plays. Like, is it the target date of late June? Is it the All-Star break? Like when could it possibly be? And those things factor into projections. If Bryce Harper plays more games than expected or less games than expected, well, obviously it's going to affect the Phillies' overall standing. One of the other things is the productivity of someone like Andrew Painter, a top prospect who I don't think anyone has like correctly or accurately assessed what he's going to do in 2023 because we don't know. There's a variety of outcomes for Andrew Painter. He might not make the team out of spring training. He might make the team out of spring training. He might immediately be a number 3 type starter, that level of production, or he might be, more of like a 4-inning guy as he builds arm strength and the stamina required to go a full season. So obviously those are two big variables in the Phillies season. Dombrowski saying that the Phillies probably have more variables than most other teams, projected for that sort of win total. The other big bit of news was Noah Song. Noah Song was the Phillies' Rule 5 pick in December's draft, the Rule 5 draft. And at the time, there wasn't really even the idea or the possibility that this guy would arrive in camp because he was in the military. He was in the Navy. The guy hasn't thrown a baseball really in 3 years, thrown a baseball competitively in 3 years, was a very hot prospect, Noah Song, coming out of the Naval Academy. Dominant senior season, went 11-1 with a 1.44 ERA. Probably would have been a high round pick, maybe a first round pick if it wasn't for the military situation. Because of that, he was drafted in the 4th round by the Red Sox. Went unprotected in this past Rule 5 draft. I don't think the Red Sox had any idea that a team was going to claim him. But the Phillies did. I mean, Dave Dombrowski saw it as a really low-risk, high-reward situation that worst-case scenario, you lose $50,000 because it costs $100,000 to make that Rule 5 selection. And if you end up not carrying that guy on the active roster and selling him back to his original team, you sell him back for $50,000. So from the Phillies' perspective, you bring in a high-upside arm, you might only lose $50,000 out of it. And there's the obvious allure of a high round talent who would have gone earlier if not for like the context of his situation. Had a chance to speak to Noah Song earlier on Thursday. Great kid, good head on his shoulders, 25 years old. He talked about how he really doesn't have any idea what to expect yet. Like he doesn't know if he's going to be throwing low 90s, high 80s. He doesn't know where his ceiling is compared to where it was a few years ago. But he's just grateful for this opportunity that he did not think was going to be coming at this point. He had his status changed to select reserves, which enabled him then to join the Phillies. And the Phillies, Rob Thompson said it's not out of the possibility, or out of the realm of possibility, that Song gets into some Grapefruit League games to test his readiness. The Phillies are not going to push him, though. I mean, the last thing they want is for this guy to get hurt. That's the case with everybody in camp, but especially someone who hasn't really stepped onto a mound in 3 years. He threw a baseball some while in the military, but his comment was that while he was there, that was his full-time job. He was fully focused on that. And that even after the Phillies drafted him in December in the Rule 5 draft, they told him, like, look, we understand that, like, the military is your thing right now. Glad to have you aboard, but they weren't, like, pestering him or anything like that. But Song has arrived, and that'll be another really interesting story to monitor throughout camp. Add that to the top storylines of Phillies camp, such as Andrew Painter and some of the other roster battles. I have a couple other, subjects to get to the center field situation, but Wednesday, I had a chance to catch up with Craig Kimbrel in the Phillies clubhouse at Baycare Ballpark. First opportunity I had to really talk to Kimbrel. And, we discussed his career to this point. We discussed the idea that a guy like that can only succeed in one role, right? So Craig Kimbrel, a little bit of background, a couple years ago was with the Cubs. Dominant first half, had a .49 ERA with 23 saves with the Cubs. Was traded to the White Sox in a crosstown deal. The White Sox had one of the best closers in baseball as well in Liam Hendricks at that point. Kimbrel became a setup man. You look at the numbers with the Cubs that year compared to his numbers with the White Sox that year, startling. .49 ERA with the Cubs, ERA over 5 with the White Sox. 1 home run allowed with the Cubs, 5 home runs allowed with the White Sox. And when something like that happens, the first narrative people jump to is, okay, traditional closer, maybe a Hall of Fame bound closer, not able to put the same type of performance together in another role. So that was one of the questions I asked Craig Kimbrel about. Do you think that there's any validity to that, or is it overblown? Because face it, he is one of many Phillies relievers who could see double-digit saves this season. You have Kimbrel, Dominguez, Alvarado, Gregory Soto, who still hasn't arrived in camp because of visa issues getting out of the Dominican Republic, but also Andrew Bellotti, Connor Brogdon with mid-90s fastballs coming off of a successful season. So a lot of balls in the air to juggle there. But here's Craig Kimbrel on his role and just the overall vibe and mood of the Phillies clubhouse and what he thinks this team can accomplish.
So how's your first week of camping?
It's been good. Yeah, the weather's not down here so far.
What was your off season like? Was it a normal off season for you?
Yeah, it was good. Just spend time at home with family on the farm and worked out. Run in a little bit, spend time with friends. Just chilled.
So a lot of big names in this clubhouse, a lot of guys who have had success over the years. Just what's your impression of this team so far?
There's a lot of excitement. A lot of guys, getting as far as they did last year and coming up just short. That's gonna put a little extra incentive in a lot of guys going into the off season and a little more excitement to just play the game and especially getting to that point, getting the experience what it is to play those meaningful games within the year. What it's like to have the fans behind them and kind of understanding what that does for each and every guy's performance on the field, how it can elevate it and then just make this game more enjoyable. And I can definitely see that around the clubhouse and the excitement to get the season started.
So the course of your career, you've been on teams that have had really high expectations. Last year, the Dodgers, obviously, and Red Sox, Braves, Carolina. Is it easy for guys to kind of just block that shit out, like knowing how the hype that's going on?
Well, because they work. Yes and no. I think here they didn't travel. So when there are these expectations put on a team, and obviously each and every night, guys are going to be coming in. We're going to be enlisting. We're going to have a target list now, right, for what these guys did last year, and what we expect to see this year. But at the same time, as a player, and knowing what we want to get to the year, we have that second kind of pressure on ourselves. Like we expect good to be, man. Every single team to come at us with everything they got every single night, because. Frankly, I think there's a lot of guys in this room that have had very successful careers so far, and they had a lot of success and already know that's coming. So, it has its positives as well. There's no nights off. Every game's important. At some point, I think that's got to be the case too because of the way this new scheduling is. Not being able to play as many times the teams in your division.
What do you think of that, by the way?
I think it'll be good. I think it's gonna be good for the fans of baseball. If a guy's hurt, I don't think it should be 3 years until that player or he'll play. Fans on the West Coast have to wait 3 years or travel all the way across the country to go watch a player play. I mean, now you're going to have that opportunity almost every year or every other year. And I think for the fans, it's a great. I think for the fairness of the schedule, I think it's a good thing as well.
How would you describe how last year went for you with the Dodgers?
Kind of like a heartbeat, up and down, up and down. I had some stretches that I felt pretty comfortable about, and that's the stretches that I was at times couldn't look at myself because I was, disappointed in my performance, disappointed in how some of the games turned out. All things that I felt like all I do is try to put myself in a position to succeed. I think at times last year I struggled to call myself there. I've consistently stayed there. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what makes me successful and what makes me not successful. So I mean, even in tough times, I look for positives. So some of those positives were just understanding myself better and understanding where I need to be successful.
So the year that you were with the Cubs, the first half you had that down first half, and you got traded. There was a lot made after that season. That he goes from closing to setting up. Perhaps that plays into what happened at the White Sox. Do you consider that to be a reason? Is it, or is it kind of overblown where people talk about a traditional closer now having to move into a different role?
I think it's an easy topic to talk about. I mean, especially as long as I've done it. I think it's easy to say, it's struggling because it's not down the ninth inning. That's not the case. I'm struggling because giving up runs. I'm putting up zeros. I think maybe at the beginning, some of it could be contributing to that. But I mean, at this point, I'm willing to do what I need to do. I have an understanding of what this game means and what this team needs to be successful. And it may not be the ninth inning every night. Do I think I'm going to have the ninth inning a good amount of times? I hope so. I think a lot of guys in this bullpen have those opportunities a lot. I think it's getting spread out. And just give us that the best scenario in winning it.
It's exciting to be part of bullpen with this many big arms. I mean, all these guys throwing 97 plus, it seems.
Yeah, they're gonna make me step it up a little bit if I want to keep up with the velocity. That's for sure.
It's probably the first time you ever said that.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thank you.
So that was Craig Kimbrel. It'll be interesting to see how this closer situation shakes out. The Phillies clearly seem to have this preference to play matchups. How does this pitcher's swing play against how does this pitcher's repertoire play against the swings of the hitters who are due up? Lefty-lefty, righty-righty. I mean, it gives Rob Thompson more options. It also allows him to deploy the highest leverage relievers whenever the highest leverage situation is. We saw that happen time and again in 2022 with Sir Anthony Dominguez or Jose Alvarado coming in earlier in games than you might have expected in years past. So another topic of camp is the center field situation. Brandon Marsh is obviously the starter, but what about beyond him? There's uncertainty. Not everybody in this bench picture is able to play center field. Like Josh Harrison isn't quite a candidate to play center field. The Phillies are trying to get Edmundo Sosa some reps in center field, but irrespective of Sosa, Dave Dombrowski said Thursday, the Phillies need someone else on the roster, on the opening day roster, who can play center, whether that's Jake Cave or whether it's Scott Kingery or whether it's Dalton Guthrie. That would seem to give Dalton Guthrie a better shot than some of these other guys to make the team. The fact that the Phillies feel comfortable with him in center field, played some outfield last year, obviously, for them late in the season, had some productive moments both offensively and defensively. But Kingery is another name not to forget about here. This is the final year of his contract, the contract that he signed prior to 2018, prior to ever playing a major league game. And there have obviously been valleys for Scott Kingery. I mean, he has not produced the way the Phillies expected when they signed him to that deal. I think they thought at that point this is going to be our number one or number two hitter, leadoff or number two hole hitter for the better part of the next decade. It just never really materialized. But, you wonder if the lack of attention on Scott Kingery at this point, it's not crazy to think that a guy can start making moves in his mid-20s, right? I mean, Scott Kingery's stuff that he's still on somewhat of a development curve. Just watching him, walk around the complex, he looks very confident. Rob Thompson said his confidence is sky high. Phillies are excited to see, his performance in spring training and whether it warrants an opening day roster spot. The other guys, so pretty much there's the two openings, right? The two openings among position players. The Phillies have their 8 solidified starters around the diamond, and then there's, the bench is going to be 4 guys. Garrett Stubbs, Josh Harrison are locks. Edmundo Sosa is a lock. But then there's 2 position players left, one for the bench, one for a starting job, because I'm not including the DH in this, right? So there's Derek Hall, Cody Clemens, Scott Kingery, Dalton Guthrie, 4 guys competing for 2 spots, basically. And the center field flexibility is going to be a big part of this, because as much as the Phillies like Brandon Marsh, as much as they want him to prove himself as an everyday player in 2023, is he going to play 162 games? Probably not. Most guys don't. What happens if he gets hurt or gets nicked up and needs to be off his feet for 10 days? What then? You want to have other guys available who have experience in center field beyond just Edmundo Sosa. I mean, the Phillies are probably confident that Sosa can adequately play anywhere just because of his defensive skill set. But, backup center field is certainly an area that the Phillies should be prioritizing and are prioritizing here as they look to, work out their 4-man bench. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Phillies Talk podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, we're just 2 days away, about 48 hours away from the Phillies' first Grapefruit League game, which will be started by Nick Nelson against the Yankees back in Clearwater, as the other half of the team faces the Tigers in Lakeland. Actually went up to Nick Nelson this morning, asked him, "Hey, excited that you're the first one up in this fifth starter battle?" And he said, "Oh, am I starting? I didn't even know." So Nick Nelson went about his offseason the same way, whether he was preparing for long relief or a starting job. One of the distant candidates in that fifth starter job, that includes Andrew Painter, Christopher Sanchez, Bailey Falter, Griff McGarry, Mick Abel, and Michael Plasmeyer. So it's a lot of guys. I mean, that's 7 names when you include Nelson. Really, it seems like the 3 top candidates, though, are Painter, Falter, and Sanchez. But hey, 2 days away, we'll probably see Painter in the middle of next week. Rob Thompson said yesterday that he thought it was around the 6th game in, which would be like Wednesday or Thursday of next week. So exciting times. There's going to be some baseball before you know it.